Right then guys, just going to do a quick demonstration on how easy it is to build a pair of speakers. All of these speakers that you can see here are all kit speakers. If you go onto my web, you've got enough room there, sir? Yes. If you go onto my website, you can see all of these kits. This is a pencil kit, and these are Frugal horns. This is an XL, and this is a Lite. They're cheap as chips compared to commercial speakers. These small ones, for instance, with the drivers, the cabinet, everything you need, just a couple of £100, up to sort of 600, just over £600 for these larger speakers. And I quite often get asked, "Oh, can you just build the speaker for us, Stephen?" Which of course I can. But people are really worried that they're going to make a mess of it and they're going to end up with something that's not very nice. So I've designed these kits to be as simple as possible to put together. It really is kind of child's play. My kids sometimes help me do it. But just as a demonstrator, this one I put together yesterday morning. And I've not done anything to it. I've not finished it in any way. It's just literally been folded up, glued, sanded down with nice 300 grit sandpaper and just left naked like that. So even if you didn't want to do any more than that, you'd still end up with a reasonable looking speaker. It's not a horrible MDF thing. It's made out of Baltic birch ply, top quality stuff, so it's nice. This one here, I thought I'd take it to the next level, again trying to keep an eye on affordability for people. So I've just got some and taken some time and hand painted these speakers. Now of course they're not perfect, you haven't got a high gloss piano sort of finish, but it is just done by hand with stuff that cost you 20 quid from B&Q, so you can end up with something that's reasonable in your room for not a lot of money. That's a £600 speaker and 20 quid's worth of paint. These ones I've obviously stuck a few bits of veneer on that I had floating around the workshop. It doesn't bear close scrutiny. Unfortunately, they were some of it was like under the units, a little bit dirty. You got mouse droppings on them and stuff. But you can see, that's reasonably easy. That's just iron-on stuff, which you can buy on the internet or through my webshop cheap. So coming back to the speaker, they come flat packed, all CNC'd. You can see everything's mitered so that you don't have these sort of play edges. Some people really like these sort of layered play edges. Some people don't, but undoubtedly you get a much nicer finish if you just use the you're fully mitered. So they fit together very easily. Basically, you're going to need some tape. I use proper carpenter's tape. This is sort of high tensile plastic. You can buy some of that off my website, but you'll get equally good results if you just use decorator's tape. The thing that you really need is this low tack backing. It's normally made out of a silicone type stuff instead of a and so if you buy like that green frog tape or the blue tape that 3M make or something like that, that's more than good enough. You don't want stretchy tape, you want to get stiff tape. But essentially you take one side of your speaker, I should have done that first. Stick a piece of tape down alongside of it. So that's the front edge. Do the same to the bottom. And again, just press it down firmly. This is essentially what's creating your clamping pressure for you. Which incidentally, along those kind of great big lines there, is at least as much as you could exert with a few clamps. So there we go, that's done on there. Put those to the side. Turn it over. It's flat on there. Now the next thing to do is line up our top and bottom panel. So you'll see that the top panel here has got a square edge, and that goes toward the back, where you'll find another square edge. So what we do is just line it up, use our finger at the back there, or a piece of wood, or a straight edge, just to make sure that's square. Drop it down onto the piece of tape you've prepared, lay it down flat, press it down so it's firm, lift it back up again and just press that tape onto the face of the timber there. Do the same the other end. Now obviously I'm not doing any gluing here, which obviously takes a little bit. what you want to do before you glue it, you want to go through the entire process, you know, dry with no glue, just to make sure that you're 100% sure that you know what you're doing, because although glue doesn't go off instantly, it goes off quick enough that you're not going to want to keep reworking everything. You're not going to want to take it apart once you put it together, so just be sure first. Then to line up this front panel, if we just lift up one of these other panels, we can use that to line up to, make sure we're 90 degrees. There we go, like that, and lay that down. You don't need to get that absolutely perfect at that point. There's a bit of leeway to move things around later. And again, we'll just make sure that our tape is stuck down. So at this point, we've got essentially a cardboard box that'll fold up, and we can do just that. If we take some pieces of tape, make these ones slightly longer than you need. Bring up the front, bring up the top. Now at this point you can feel that, you see how that's trying to hold those apart. That's because of the pressure on the tape. See, these are, you know, 45-degree miters, and that tape is trying desperately to stop it pushing back against the mitre. So we just hold them together, apply our piece of tape, make sure they're lined up nicely, pull the piece of tape around the corner. That's creating our clamping pressure there. Do the same at the bottom. So that's that there. And then you'll see inside here that I've got these rebates where we put our internal panels. So these internal panels create the sort of quarter wave line. So these are sort of expanding Tractrix horns. So there are two panels for that. One is your internal panel, rounded one end, it's got a quarter round on the other end. So they line up in there, literally just slots in there like that. Obviously when you come to put the glue in, if you've bought some of this Type Bond that you've got with the kit, you'll find that it's got a sort of spready nozzle on the top of it. If you're using some wood glue that you've got at home already, that's fine, but just use a spreader. I've lost my spreader. You can buy them, you know, 25 of them for, you know, £3 or £4 on Amazon. So just get yourself some spreaders like you used to have at school, and spread it out. You want it kind of up the walls of the rebate a little bit, and along the bottom, so we get as much sort of glue area as possible. You don't want loads when you put it in. You don't want it to squeeze out all over the place. You're inevitably rather going to get some squeeze out of glue. So if you just have yourself a damp cloth, not a really wet cloth, but just a damp cloth, you can just wipe up any excess glue that you get and just go over it to, you know, kind of clean everything up.
Sorry, is it worth doing the internals before you actually start on all the external stuff?
No. You want to do this. You want to do this kind of last, and I shall show you why. Really, firstly, it's kind of it's sort of self-jigging. So you really need to do it all at the same time. So you need to have these square, so that when you put this side on, which has obviously got the mirror image rebates, they clamp onto these rebates, and that's what's holding those square. Because of course you can imagine if you glued those in first and they were, you know, 1 degree one on, you know, the miters then wouldn't line up at the front. So that's why I'm saying that you need to, you know, go over it as a dry run a couple of times, so you're absolutely sure of the process that you're going to go through, find what works best for you, and then do it all at the same time. This one has got the connector holes in the back. They're keywayed. I don't know if you guys can see that from there. There's a little slot at the bottom of those holes, and the connectors that we sell on the website have got a little plastic insert which goes into them, so that we just do them finger tight. You know, there's no way then of those connectors rotating in the hole. So that just goes in there. Easy, like that. Now you see we've got this line formed. So it's tapering horn, starts at the bottom there, it's called the terminus. The driver's about a midway down the terminus there, and then the exit hole down here, and then this sort of Tractrix sort of half expansion horn at the back here. This needs some damping. So here, you'll get some felt with the kit. You can order yourself some spray as well if you've got, you know, a preferred way of doing it. You know, do that. But this works well. Spray the spray in here. Spray some. It's gone a bit tacky, and then just bring the two surfaces together. So that'll go in there like that. You find yourself two more square pieces. Cut that to go in there. You need to make sure that you don't overlap the mitre, otherwise you won't get the other side on. So that needs to overlap the mitre. And then the other piece will go on there and just wrap around that corner a little bit so the piece of wood isn't exposed. Again, you need to leave yourself a little gap down the edge so that the mitre can sit over the piece of wood there. I'll take those back out a minute. And then the line needs damping as well. Now the recommendation for these is to not damp the front half of the line, just to damp the pointed part of the line here. It takes about 60 grams of wool. You can experiment with different amounts, but that's about 60 grams. I know that because I use it a lot. So you want to stretch that out, tease it out, spend a bit of time doing this. You want an equal amount of teasing, if you like, an equal amount of volume, air between the fibres. So it's about the same length as this part, and then pop it in. So you can pick it up as one part and pop it in. Now obviously it's much tighter down this end, and that's exactly what we want. So push it all in, use something long, a chopstick or, you know, knife or something, push it in, and you're going to have much denser stuffing here than you are then towards the top, and that's the idea. What we don't want is this stuffing to end up all behind the driver. Firstly, you'll make the driver compress and it'll sound all quacky and horrible, or you'll get these tiny little fibres, you know, in the gap, and you know you get a rubbing noise. So that needs to, you know, just be in that back half, not behind the driver. Now luckily it's you know, sort of almost perpetually expands, you know, so it doesn't fall out once you put it in there. It just, you know, sort of holds itself in. And then once you've done that,
you put glue on one surface or both?
for the spray glue,
No, for
the wood glue, no, just put it in the one surface, that's fine. When you do the mitres, inevitably you end up with it on the both surfaces. When you've got the other sort of half of the mitre on there, you sort of squirt it down this one, but by the time you've been down the whole speaker, it's sort of dripped down into the middle. So you know, you get your spreader at that point and spread it up, and to get it out of the way, basically you're going to end up spreading it up the other side as well. So when you come to glue it together, after you've put these sides in and everything's, you know, kind of square, and you've actually put the glue in, don't put the stuffing in at that point, because obviously you're going to get glue all over your stuffing and whatever. But you will need to put this on. Don't glue it though. So that essentially goes on there like that. Then we can put some tape around there, and that's essentially jigging the whole thing, so we know the whole thing's square. And then when these bits of glue have gone off, we can take that back off again, put our stuffing in, our cables, you know, the driver, screw it all up, and you know, stick this other side on. But essentially you then do the same thing, you know, with this. We get a few bits of tape. I'm not going to use too much. You'll probably go along the whole thing, but the thing that you need to do is, you know, make sure, I mean this one's a bit chipped so it looks like it's not lining up, but they do. And you're closing up those gaps. Yeah, obviously this one's been bashed about a bit. So it's just about closing up those gaps. Now you want to, you know, get this as close as you can. It doesn't need to be absolutely perfect, so long as you've closed the gaps up as much as you absolutely can. Now you'll find when you do this, some glue squeezes out. Again, just take your damp cloth, wipe along the mitre. Sometimes you'll put the bit of tape on and you'll find it squeezes out where you are, and you can just ease that tape back a little bit, wipe the excess glue away, and then put it back down again. Doesn't matter if you get a bit of glue on it, because obviously we're going to sand it all later. problem is with glue is sometimes you can't see it. You know, it'll get into the pores of something a little bit, and you'll sand it and you'll think, oh, there's no glue on there, and then you go to put the stain on and you'll find that the stain or the wax or the oil or whatever will just pool on that bit there. So you do need to make sure that you keep it as clean as you can. It doesn't need to be impeccably clean. And so that's that really. At that point you would just let it dry, and then if hopefully you put your cables in, before we put the side on, you just put your driver in with the cables plugged into it, plug it in, and job's a good one really. So that shouldn't really take you any more than a couple of hours, and after that you just get some sandpaper if you start out at 120 or 150 grit or something like that, and just go over and get any bits of glue off, where you've got bits of muck, get those off. If you chipped any of it, it's quite brittle ply, so if you chipped any of it, just a bit of sort of birch coloured filler that you can get, pop that in, and then once you've got that all nice and smooth, go over with a higher grit, say 200 grit, 300 grit. You can get down to 400 grit. And we feel these ones there down at 300 grit. That's perfectly acceptable. And then after that, stain them, wax them, oil them, leave them as they are, paint them, do whatever. So my reason for doing all of this is that I've spent my entire sort of adult life building speakers, amplifiers, bits and pieces, trained in sound engineering and all of that sort of thing. And having got more into the audiophile way of things as the years have gone by and as I've earned more money and I've been able to spend more stuff, what's really struck me is that things cost a ridiculous amount of money, as you know. And there really isn't any real need for them to cost a ridiculous amount of money. Obviously, I haven't got a manufacturer and then a distributor and then a dealer. I haven't got all of those kind of levels. Obviously, you're buying stuff straight from me, so I haven't got all of those kind of multiples. So, these Frugal Horn XLs here, they're about £600 with all of the bits in that you need: the drivers, the stuffing, the cables, connectors, bits and pieces. But if you were having to buy them from a commercial manufacturer, they'd be £3.5 grand, something like that. So you're getting something which really is a great deal of money. And certainly even at £3.5 grand, you're not getting something that's built out of Baltic birch ply with internal bracings and whatever. So you're getting
how much are the drivers then?
So the drive.
On the drivers?
Yeah, so that varies quite a lot. So these drivers are £85 a pair. These little ones, and so this whole the drivers in there about £165 a pair. There's a lot.